I've desperately needed to fix the coilover situation on my Track Hack MX-5 here. It's currently got some greasy old stock shocks with some springs that have been cut with an angle grinder. And rather timely, Voston suspension here have come into the market here in Australia with a new product. So today I've got a set which I'm going to throw onto this little thing. Okay, we all hate YouTube videos with too much waffle, but before we start, there's a few things I need to cover. So let me get to the point and I'll try and make this brisk. You're probably asking firstly, who or what is Voston? Well, they're a new Australian-based suspension mob specifically targeting the budget range of the market. And obviously the MX-5 is kind of a budget car. So, well, here we are. These things are manufactured in Taiwan but with an Australian-based HQ, and actually there is some involvement from MCA with their setup and design, which should be a good thing. I'd like to add, for those of you who may be geographically challenged, Taiwan, not Thailand, is a country just south of Japan. There's heaps of your favourite coilover brands made there: BC, K-Sport, Megan and Voston. Now secondly, this is a budget coilover, but let me touch on that and clarify what I think budget means. Firstly, budget is relative. What I think is budget may not match your opinion, and in this case, I think budget is around the $1,000 mark. And obviously, talking coilover pricing, it's all pretty broad. There's a huge range of products and a huge range of brands to choose from. You've got bog stock factory suspension, which in the MX-5, the factory shocks are actual coilovers. You've got lowering springs for just basically dumping your car. You've got aftermarket options from ultra budget tier coilovers, generally coming out of China with no branding, or brands like Max Peating rods. In that case, you're talking sort of sub $400. If that's your target budget, really, I'd suggest just save a little bit more money and get something a little bit better. But beyond that, there are a few more commonly known brands, but still in the cheap range, say $700 to $800. Really, where the market gets competitive is where the Vostons come in the sort of more respectable budget level coilover. What do I mean by a respectable budget? Well, it comes from a brand that has some actual experience. Their product has real R&D and actual engineering for the specific chassis the product is for. The Voston is in the same price range as your entry-level BC or the Fortune Auto stuff in the States, both of which are brands that have strong reputations in the market but are priced at an accessible point. And obviously, beyond that, you can start to talk all sorts of dollars and brands. Öhlins, KW, Penske, the list goes on. Let's be honest, the which coilover conjecture on the internet, it'll never die. Thirdly, you're probably asking, who the hell am I and what qualifies me to review a product or offer an opinion of value? Well, I'm nobody. I'm not a pro racing driver and I'm not a suspension engineer. But I have been track driving MX-5 specifically for over 10 years. I've got two of them here right beside me. I've also tried a wide array of aftermarket suspension options on my very own cars, including BCBRs, factory option Bilsteins, IBAC lowering springs, Team Flex coilovers, bog stock shocks, and yellow speed. Oh, and how can I forget the bloody Max Peating rods? Anyway, let's see what we get in this box and throw these things on the car. Let's see what we get in the box. Individually boxed shocks by the look of it. Oh yep, so we've got some extra foam in the ends, but that's pretty simple packaging. On face value, these things are already looking pretty good. In the box you get obviously your 4 shocks, you get your adjustment spanners for the shock height and spring perch, and you get some paperwork. That's all pretty standard stuff. They look really neat, they've got a good finish to them, really solid. Springs look like they're well set with the helper spring. We've got plastic or rubber perch seats, which are nice, means you don't have a real clanking noise when the spring moves around. Although with the helper spring and everything set properly, I don't really think the spring will be moving. The bottom bush and top bush are both some sort of rubber or urethane, which is pretty normal for this range of coilover. It gives a nice amount of comfort for the road, but still fairly good performance when you want to give the car a bit of a squirt. We've got adjustability for the damper in the top. We've got spring and height adjustability here with the shock body and a fairly heavy spring. So front is a 13 kilo, rear is a 9 kilo. That's quite high for an MX-5, particularly when you compare it to most other competitors on the market. BC offer a 10 kilo front, 8 kilo rear. A lot of your more street-based coilovers, like the cheaper teens, and I'm not sure, something like a Yellow Speed, they're usually in the 6 to 8 kilo range at the front and 4 to 7 kilo in the rear. So these being 13 at the front and 9 at the rear, it's quite high. Interesting to see why they've done that and how that'll impact street drivability, because there is a fear that these could be too hard for this little car. We'll find out, I suppose. Interestingly, no markings on these shocks. Often you'll see a sticker or something here with the brand. I don't know if that's because this is one of the first ones in the country, or if it's just the way they've gone with things, but they're completely unmarked, which is very interesting. If you're wondering about camber adjustment, obviously it directly relates to ride height, so if you lower the car, the more static camber the car will have. Cars with the McPherson strut will have adjustment in the top mount. For the MX-5, however, with the double A-arm suspension geometry, you have cam bolts in the arm for setting the alignment, and there is no adjustment in the top hat here, which is why you can see it's all fixed. Now, as I understand, these come configured from the factory with Voston MCA settings preset. So I'm not going to play with them, I'm not going to adjust the height, I'm not going to adjust the spring perch or preload. I'm just going to put them in the car and see how they perform. Cut springs, dodgy shocks, gone. Now we can take her for a spin. We'll let the car warm up a little bit.
What happened to spinners, man?
Spinners used to be awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, they were genuinely the worst thing.
They were the worst
quite
thing.
terrible.
Yeah, they looked crap.
They kind of made sense on like one of those stupid big Hummers or something.
Yeah, yeah.
The best thing that I've seen, it's kind of a spinner, is the Rolls-Royce center caps that don't spin. They're like they're set stationary.
Oh, like centrifugal. Yeah. I get
So I don't know how it works.
It's like an anti-spinner in a sense.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of a spinner.
It's just a few little grooves.
Yeah. Still got the loud intake noise, this car, doesn't it?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't have any cracks. Did you check the last time? I didn't actually.
See, on smooth roads, these heavier springs, they're okay. You definitely get a bit of transfer of road surface, and you get the bumps, obviously, driving over speed bumps and things. but it does dampen it quite well for a heavy spring. I spoke to them about it, and I sort of said, why is it a heavy spring compared to a lot of the competitors? And their justification was generally people run a lower car, they like the lower look, and street
Yep.
street setups, or I guess the market they're targeting is that they kind of need to allow for a wide range of customers. It's that sort of that sort of market. There's people that want a cheap coilover for just the dump look. They want a cheap coilover for the sort of sporty feel, or they want it's someone who's probably doesn't want to spend a lot of money on a budget track car, kind of like this car. And so a slightly heavier spring means that they can accommodate people that want to go really low in the car. The lower the car, they want a heavier spring so that you don't lose, or I guess you compensate for the less suspension travel you have, so that the coilovers aren't bottoming out and things, which I guess kind of makes sense in a way. It's a bit of a compromise, but it's a compromise that at least supports more range of customers' use, I suppose. If you were a person who goes, oh, that's not for me, that's a compromise that doesn't make sense for my use, well then you probably aren't targeted at this type of coilover. You probably want an actual coilover that's built for your car for your use. You might want to spend a little bit more money on an off-the-shelf MCA rather than an off-the-shelf Voston. The MCAs might cost maybe twice as much, but they can design the spring rate and the valving to your use. Or you might want to, I guess they justified the heavier spring rate for a reason, and I like that. At least they're thinking about what their customers are trying to do. That kind of makes sense.
So it's a compromise spring at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess so, and
which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can be.
I suppose the other argument is that you go, well, why are the competitors like Teen? There's a speed camera. The competitors like Teen running such a light spring, they're probably not when they designed them, say 10 years ago, the MX-5 community was different. We didn't have as many sort of rough cars, we didn't have the dumped scene, there wasn't really an MX-5 scene like there is now. And I think back then, probably looking at an older owner who didn't want to go really low, and that's why you could have a softer spring, so you still had a lot more compliance on the road, and you had a lot more comfort, similar with yellow speeds and things. BCs came along a bit later, or a bit more recently, and they've probably been that middle ground. And then again, I think the industry has changed and the community has changed, particularly with the MX-5, and you get a lot more lower cars now. Cars are going also a lot faster, there's a lot more grip and things, and technology has changed. And I guess perhaps Voston is the latest in the market, and they're probably targeted the current trend. So that's probably why, again, a sort of, I guess, a justification for the heavier spring rate.
So do you think overall it's quite good for this car, or good for the general?
So I guess you can feel here now, we do, on a bumpy road, it probably is a little uncomfortable. The bumps come through a bit too aggressively, but we have got the coilovers set quite hard at the moment. The dampers are on sort of pretty close to hard. They're about 5 clicks off full hard.
Give us a good run for our money.
Yeah. In between the bumps, you can feel how it's quite precise.
Yeah.
The amount of lean and things we had before with the stock coilovers compared to now, it's a complete difference. A little bit of a wet road, a little bit of a skiddy.
We are hitting those bumps a lot harder. It does feel that, but it's not like it's uncomfortable. It's not that bad.
No, yeah.
It's only the big bumps that you notice. The big, oh shit, yeah.
Yeah, a smooth road, so this again is a lot smoother. It doesn't feel bad at all. What I'm thinking, why don't we try dial the coilovers back and go for a run back around the way we came.
Reversey.
And let's see how it differs. So they suggested that 8 clicks from full hard on the front and 10 clicks from full hard on the rear. I think we had 5, and I'm not sure what the rear was, maybe 5 as well. So we've gone full soft now.
So we should.
Let's see if we see a noticeable difference on the way back. So we're now at the bumpy bit again. Let's see if we notice a difference.
I mean streets. I think more to the point, the other tyres looks really good.
Yeah, well they are. They're basically one of the best street tyres you can get, the Yokohama 8008. So I don't know about you, but I noticed through that so far,
it just feels like
before there was a bit more of the smaller bumps.
Yeah.
I didn't notice them at all.
It did feel very smooth. I don't know if it's also...
It felt a lot smoother.
I think at the roundabout, loop back around and do it again.
Yeah, let's go up again. Once again, getting an MX-5, you rev the guts out of it, and you're still only doing 80 kilometers an hour. It's definitely a bumpy road, but I do feel like there's more compliance now. You can still feel the bumps, but instead of them being kind of on-off like a switch, it's a bit more of a curve, you know. The bumps don't just go clonk, they kind of bump.
It isn't a hard drop or a hard hit on the next bump coming up kind of thing.
Rather than it rattling your teeth, it just jiggles your head.
Yeah.
And I guess that's cool. That means you can sort of use these every day, drive to work.
Yeah, if you're just driving to work every day with these, I'd chuck it on the softest you can.
Yeah.
You just want to be like...
And then on the weekend, you want to go see your mates that...
Turn it on.
Okay, that was a pretty big bump. Yeah, you turn...
That was a rough bit of road.
You dial them up a notch.
Yeah.
And then...
up to 5 clicks and then boom.
And then once a month, you go to an autocross, a Motorcana, or Winton Raceway, and you can play with them and go quicker or go harder on the damping settings again, where you've got a nice smooth racetrack and long corners. It is interesting, you compare spring rates between different brands, because I think that's the defining point in this coilover, is for the market that, I guess, or the price or the budget range that it's at, it's a lot heavier than its competitors. But you look at the more bespoke stuff or track-oriented products, and they are a heavier rate. For example, the 949 Super Miata guys, they're running much heavier spring rates. These being 13 kilo, you compare that to 949, they're offering something like 16 or higher as their preferred coil front spring rate on an MX-5 Miata chassis, and so it doesn't make these coilovers that unusual.
Does this make a good bang for buck coilover though?
Well, I guess it does in a way. If the dampers have been set up, and it sounds like they have, the dampers have been set up with a valving rate that sort of complements the spring, then it probably is a good entry-level way into something that's well set up for this car at a compromise between street and track.
Yeah.
I think their intention was to probably more target the street. It's more like a 75-25, 75% street cars, 25% track time, and that's kind of what a lot of MX-5 owners do now. Is it becomes a little bit more of a toy sometimes, and a lot of the time it's for the street. But despite being
also, if we're talking basic needs of most people, it probably fits the needs of those people.
I do still think it's probably a little bit firmer than the older crowd, perhaps you'd say. Those that use it 100% street, only on the road, and they don't use an MX-5 for anything more than just a normal car. But I think most people who only use an MX-5 for a normal car aren't going to put a coilover in, generally.
Exactly.
So if I own an MX-5 and I think I want a coilover for my MX-5, then I would probably suggest that this is a good entry-level option at a reasonably priced, sort of the $1,000 range. If you're an MX-5 owner and you want comfort and you use it every day and you do want a little bit of sportiness, then probably coilovers aren't the answer anyway. Might go straight. I think in that case then you're probably just looking at maybe just a little bit of a lowering spring to just slightly firmen things up, which is what I did with our ND, and that I think is the perfect solution for that type of car. It's an everyday car, it's a little bit lower, so it gives it a slightly nicer look, but a little bit firmer. It got rid of that body roll that the NDs were known for when they came out of the factory, but it still rides over speed bumps, it still drives fine every day. It still doesn't, it doesn't scrape on gutters or anything when you're driving around.
And it looks nice on the road.
And it looks alright, yeah. You wouldn't put a coilover in that car, it's kind of a waste of money. Wave to the camera. So I think for people, not everyone knows what they want to do with their car when they buy it, and obviously everyone has their own. Cars are so unique and people are so unique that everyone builds their car the way they want, or in a particular fashion. And that's the Vostons all done and dusted. In general, a really easy install into this MX-5 here. I think for any average everyday user who only daily drives, then perhaps the Vostons are a little bit too aggressive. However, the moment you do any form of spirited driving, these are a great option. For us, we found the amount of adjustability between soft and hard was just right, where we could get it comfortable for everyday driving and also a bit more aggressive when we took it out to the twisties. I guess you could say these coilovers are a bang for buck option, and the MX-5 is a bang for buck car. For us, we'll take it from here to Phillip Island and do some laps and see how the car performs there. However, that'll be in another video. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was insightful and entertaining, and we'll catch you next time. Ta! Does that look alright?
Yep, looks good.
Do I look pretty?
You always look shitty.
Oh.
I mean, you look pretty.
Oh, thank you. Comes from a brand that's got that f***ing bird. Did you even hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't think, I just thought Australian.
People will comment in every comment I get, why have you got birds? I don't have birds, birds live around here.
Australian nature, man. What,
Yeah.
do they live
where there's no birds? Yeah. Oh, there's a train coming. I think we call it.
I want you to not be a drongo.
Oh.